I just want to be able to say how grateful I am to all of you and how grateful I am for the position that you have held and advocated for. I think what we are seeing is now vindication in a new way. That the position that all of us have held is no longer what could be considered the fringe or what some people might even term an extremist position, that Israel is made up of contiguous land, that it includes Judea, Samaria, that this is in fact Israel, that East Jerusalem is in fact Israel. This is not up for question. This is a fact. Israel is not an occupier. Israel is an owner. There is no question that if Judea and Samaria were somehow cut out, if Israel gave up 40% of its land, we wouldn't have a guarantee of peace. We would have a guarantee of war. There's also no question in my mind that one day the temple will be rebuilt upon the Temple Mount, that it will happen. The reason why it will happen is because it is a promise that it will happen, and we can stand on that promise, not on our bluster, but a fact that it is a promise, and it will happen. There was a story that came out today in the Associated Press newspaper, and it was reported that Israel was being blamed for the fact that they did not give up 40% of their land to the Palestinians, and they said that Jonathan Pollard's release, the fact that Jonathan Pollard would have been released, but for Israel's unwillingness to give up the land. The fact is, the United States of America has been remiss. Jonathan Pollard should have been released over 25 years ago. He is not a pawn. And he's been continually used as a pawn to force Israel to make unreasonable concessions that would compromise her security. Even in Jonathan Pollard's own words, he said, "Do not use me as the pawn and do not release me in exchange," because his heart is for the Jewish state and the contiguous nature of the Jewish state. But again, I think we see the fact and the truth of where we are today. There are 57 Muslim nations of the world, if you count the Palestinian Authority as a Muslim nation. There is one Jewish state. And so for the Jewish state to be expected to continually give up land for a fictionalized, never to be realized peace is now exposed for what it is. It will never happen. The Muslim nations have hundreds of times more land than the Jewish people have. They can't be expected to give up one more square inch of land to the Muslim nations, nor will we. It was 40 years ago, next month, that I went to Israel for the first time. I went the day after I graduated from high school, and I spent the summer there. I worked picking weeds in a cotton field at Kibbutz Be'eri in Beersheba. And at that time, you couldn't find an ice cube in Israel. It was a very, very different world, and I've been there multiple times since then. And it's wonderful to see that at that time in 1974, 40 years ago, the United States was the first world nation, the premier nation among nations. And Israel was a struggling third world country, just struggling and fighting off its enemies on either side as at the same time it was trying to build up. Very much like the book of Nehemiah, with a trowel in one hand and with a sword in the other. That's been Israel's story since May of 1948, and don't let us forget it. But look at the miracle that has happened. Look at this reconstituted Jewish state, which again is a land and a people. and the people that have come from all corners of the globe to this specific area with a reconstituted language and a reconstituted faith. It's why I know we will see a reconstituted temple on the Temple Mount today. It will happen. I wanted to say again a few things. If you haven't seen the article that came out today, it struck me as being very significant, and it was this. The report was that an official within the current Obama administration gave an interview to a very high-profile columnist in Israel. And during the course of the remarks, the Obama administration appeared disgusted with Israel and ready to wash their hands of Israel, and said, in fact, and predicted that there would be a third intifada. And this is a remarkable statement, because what we've heard in the last few weeks coming out of the administration has been a similar theme. One of the themes has been, as recently as Holocaust Remembrance Day, that our Secretary of State reportedly had said in a certain context that Israel was an apartheid state. Now, you couldn't have a more ill-timed remark on National Holocaust Remembrance Day to call the Jewish state an apartheid state, especially in a vacuum of no evidence. In fact, the evidence is just to the contrary. I've been to multiple Muslim states in the Middle East, and there are two classes and multiple classes of people in state after state after state, where there are citizenship and rights granted to some, privilege granted to some, and not to others. So much so that in some cases, when a person comes into that state, their passport is taken away from them. They may work, they may never get their wage, and they may never be able to leave again. And if they have violations made against them, there is no redress of grievances. When have you heard a call for eliminating that kind of discrimination in the Muslim states in the Middle East? That wouldn't be tolerated for 5 hours in the Jewish state of Israel. It would be front page news, and we don't see that. And so we can stand tall knowing that the history and the legacy of the Jewish state is one of standing for human rights and for human dignity. Just prior to the conference that is usually held in Washington, D.C., known as the Apec Conference, there was also a remarkable set of circumstances. There was an interview that was released just prior to Benjamin Netanyahu coming into the United States. That was an interview that our president had given with Bloomberg News, and in that interview, it was stated very clearly by the president, again, that if Israel does not yield and give up and cede 40% of its land, i.e. Judea, Samaria, that there would be an isolationism that would occur for Israel from the international community, and that there would be an economic isolation. Again, the calls take this same familiar refrain. It is that if Israel doesn't give up the land, there will be political pain from the international community. That was threatened again today. There would be economic pain that would be brought against Israel through boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. And third, there would be a third intifada, which is a war or physical pain brought against the Jewish state. And again, I ask, show us the list of violations. Where has Israel done this wrong? If they're there, show us. They would be on the front page of every paper in the form of a headline, in the form of a photo. You can't find it because they don't exist. And so in one of my recent trips to Israel, I was conferring with some of the leadership there, and I have put together legislation that we're going to be rolling out soon, and it's essentially this. It is boycott the boycotters. The idea originated in 1973 with the Arab League. And the United States at that time boycotted the boycotters. All my legislation does very simply is continue that same thread, that we're going to do exactly what we did in 1973. And whether it's the EU, whether it is coming from the United States or the academics here in the United States that somehow think it's okay to do the boycott against Israel, one thing we also are encouraging people to do is be on offense. It's time for Israel to stop being on defense. Israel needs to be strong. I don't believe that Israel even needs the United States of America. Israel can be strong on her own. I do believe that, my opinion is, I want to see the United States remain supportive of Israel, but I am sorry to say I believe that for the first time since the modern Jewish state declared her independent sovereignty, I believe that it's within these last 6 years that we have seen the United States, again, for the first time since May of 1948, take a position politically, not the American people, not the bulk of the United States Congress, but the official position of the United States government as given by the administration, in my opinion, today is against Israel and is anti-Israel, and it's the first time that's happened since May of 1948. That is to the detriment of the United States. We are the ones who are hurt more by that, even more than Israel is hurt. We are hurt by that. Because I believe very sincerely, again, that there is a promise. There's a promise to nations in how we relate to Israel. And when we decide that we are going to put our hand against Israel, then I think we risk something against our own country. I don't want to see us be there. And that's why, as a member of the United States Congress, wherever I can stand with that level of authority, I will stand even against my own president if my president is standing against the Jewish state of Israel. We have something in Congress called the Intelligence Committee, and I know it's hard to think of the word Congress and intelligence in the same sentence, but we do have the Intelligence Committee. We deal with the classified secrets of the nation. In particular, we deal with the issue of terrorism. I'm privileged to sit on the Intelligence Committee. I was in Israel about to meet with the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. I went into the room to meet with him in the conference room, and he said, "Did you hear what just happened? Did you hear the news?" And we said, "No, what are you talking about?" And he said, "They've just announced the P5+1 agreement. This is the agreement that 6 nations came up with, in my opinion, which effectively puts a shield of protection over Iran so that Iran can continue with their nuclear weapons program." Now, that isn't how the Obama administration would describe it. They would say, in essence, they have frozen the program. I say, how do you freeze a nuclear weapons program that's allowed to continue unabated research and development for nuclear warheads, that allows you to continue the development of missile delivery systems for a nuclear system, and allows you to continue to spin tens of thousands of centrifuges to create the fissile material that would go into the development of a nuclear weapon? This is going on today. The P5+1 agreement is a disaster because the United States of America has given Iran the luxury of time to create the most deadly, vile weapon that there is. And the stated intention, as we know, by the leadership of Iran, is to use it to annihilate the Jewish state. Now, the reason why they're working on a missile defense system is simply this. They have the missile capability today in Iran to deliver a nuclear warhead, once they have that developed, against the Jewish state. The reason why they want to work on a missile delivery system is because the United States, you see, is the great Satan. Israel is the little Satan. So they want to be in a position so that when they are about to launch a missile against the Jewish state, they first launched one against the United States. Knock out the big dog so that the big dog won't have the capability to defend the Jewish state. For the United States to not make its #1 priority right now to knock out that nuclear program in any way we can is madness and ensuring war. It was in the shadow and the aftermath of the disastrous P5-1 agreement, which, by the way, no one even knew that the Obama administration was engaging in secret negotiations with Iran. You don't even dignify a regime like that by talking to them, but the Obama administration did. In the shadow and aftermath of P5+1, that's when we saw, according to the Obama administration in their eyes, the worst problem in the world was the fact that Israel refused to give up Judea and Samaria in the so-called peace talks. Now, as of today, and the article that came out today, that again essentially called Israel, for all practical purposes, an apartheid state, saying there will be a third intifada, that the Palestinians will get a state, whether it is through violence or whether it is through an international agreement. As far as I'm concerned, the game is over. The game is over. The kabuki theater that's been played, where Israel's had to go along with this nonsense for decades, is over. You see, I think this is liberating. This is good. Because we recognize there is only one answer and there is only one solution. It's no longer a two-state solution. The Palestinians rejected that in their Hamas charter, their Fatah charter. They don't believe in a two-state solution. They believe in a one-state solution, the Palestinian state. That's it, with the Jewish people dead. I believe that if Israel gave up every square inch of the land, it still wouldn't be enough as long as there's one Jew alive on the planet. It's never enough. And so that's why we stand with strength, unapologetically, with complete force. We stand for the Jewish state of Israel, including Judea, including Samaria. We are on offense. We are not on defense. We will stand for Israel to be the united, eternal capital of the Jewish state, and we will never retract from that position. I thank you all for standing strong. I stand with you. God bless you all, and God bless the Jewish state.